Hi, I'm Gareth Hollis and welcome to episode 6 of everything you never needed to know about me. If you've stuck with it so far and you've actually worked your way through it, thank you. If you're jumping straight in, you've probably missed some great stuff, most of which is probably completely irrelevant to your life, but yeah, it obviously means something to me. And that's all that matters at the end of the day, isn't it? So, little disclaimer again. Trigger warning, still waiting on subjects such as depression, assault, suicide to come up. So if you're of a sensitive nature, I'll give you a heads up before that comes up. I'm using a random number generator to tell me what I'm going to talk about at any one time. So yeah, it's completely random. I have no idea. Expect tangents, expect potential bad language. I think I've been quite good so far at curbing the swearing. Expect maybe a little bit of repetition between the episodes, but I'll do my best to try and remember what I've already said. So, first number. Well, that took a while. First number, 32. So this is Broken Brain and Anyone Else Who Isn't Me. So these are two songs I wrote when about the time I was diagnosed with depression. So Broken Brain, specifically Broken Brain, was written when I was first diagnosed or just before I was diagnosed. And it was at a time when I was just trying to work out really what was going on in my brain because I didn't understand it. At the time I didn't even know I had depression. So that was written to try and work out and understand it for myself. I didn't intend for anyone to see it. I barely remember even writing it, in all honesty. My memory of that time isn't great. And it was only a few years later when I was going through my computer at work and I found it still on the desktop, and I thought, actually, this is quite powerful words. I mean, trying to stay humble and everything, but I found it quite powerful, and I thought, actually, people need to see this because it might help people who are feeling in a similar way and maybe don't realise that they need help, because I didn't realise I needed it. And so that was why I wrote it. It was the same with Anybody Else Who Isn't Me. However, Broken Brain was one of the ones that when I put it on YouTube, someone actually picked it up. A guy in Cornwall, I believe it was, called Paul Whitwam, who's a musician. He picked it up and he actually made it into a song, and he did a really good job. It's something I'm very proud that it's part of me and that my words went into that. It's something I'm hoping will find a bit more exposure at some point, because I think there really is. It could really help people. And Anyone Else Who Isn't Me, written about the anxiety side of things, the inadequacy, feelings like that, as well as obviously depression. That one's not got any music to it at this point, but maybe in the future it might have. That's all I'm going to say on that. I don't want to go into the depression side of things too much, because that's a subject that's still waiting to come up. So, on to the next one. 31. Another song. Probably a nice short one, this one. So, In Bleach is a song. I kind of came up with a lot of the words for it when I was about 18, and I used to go around to a friend's house and we'd stay up pretty late playing a game called Worms on the PlayStation. The original PlayStation, the big grey rectangular thing. Although actually I've still got it. I can see it from where I am. I've got it in this caravan because I've got a PlayStation 2 in here. PlayStation 2 obviously plays original PlayStation games. In fact, I'm using Premier Manager 2000, the case for a phone holder at the moment, so I can record this video. So yeah, just because it's obsolete doesn't mean it doesn't still have uses. Anyway, so we used to play Worms a lot, about that age. I'd not long started driving, so I used to drive to his house because he lived in the sticks, like in the middle of the countryside, and we'd eat cheese sandwiches and drink beer and play Worms, and I just came up with words that went to the tune of the Worms, well, the Worms tune for the PlayStation, and I always thought it'd be interesting to hear someone play an actual musical version of it, like on the guitar, and singing along with the words, and yeah, ideally with sound effects from Worms. I can't get my voice very squeaky anymore, but things like "You're a great ooh, and things like that. I just thought it'd be a bit of fun. No one's picked it up yet, but who knows? Who knows what the future brings? So nice quick one. Moving on to the next. 4. This is how tech savvy I am, using a notebook. But in fairness, I've only had a smartphone for about 6 months. Number 4 is debt. So when I was 18, I decided I wanted a different car to what I had. And I think it was mostly because the bank had either sent me a letter or they'd phoned me and saying that I was eligible for a loan, and it got my, the cogs in my head spinning. I thought, yeah, okay, let's get a new car, and I got a loan out for £1,000, and it was a bit more than that actually, because I took the PPE, the payment protection, on it. And the idea was I'd buy this other car and then I'd sell the car I had. Few issues with this. So first of all, couldn't seem to sell the car I had. Initially I was probably asking a bit too much for it, and then as time went on it just became not worth a lot. It's probably worth a lot more than I was asking now, because we're talking 20 years ago. That was a Ford Granada. Nice car for an 18-year-old. Anyway, so couldn't sell that to get the money, and then I lost my job, which, not a problem, you'd think, since I had the payment protection. That was what it was supposed to be for, really. But when I contacted the bank, they wouldn't cover it. I can't remember the reasons now. But I just then got into my head as a stupid 18-year-old, well, fuck it then. If you're not going to help me, like, do the things that that I thought were in place to stop this happening, then I kind of lost my loyalty to try and give you your money back. And with that, unfortunately, the debt started mounting up, because then I had late payments, things like that, fees for that, and then surcharges, and then going to debt management companies that added their own charges. And unfortunately, I'd just got my first phone contract a couple of years later when I was still in debt, and unfortunately that didn't go well either, due to a few issues. One, again, lost a job, and still had this big phone bill to pay, and two, I was kind of in between girlfriends at the time, and I was talking to a few girls quite extensively. Not that I'm any kind of casting over or anything. This was completely new territory for me. I barely managed to get one girl most of the time. In fact, I spent a lot of my life single up until I got married. Anyway, so see, this is the tangents I warned you about. So it got me, the debt just spiraled, really. I made sure that I worked sort of cash in hand jobs where not cash in hand, but where I wasn't getting paid into the bank, because I knew if the money went into the bank would just take it straight away. And it just got to be quite a problem in the end. And really, it took me far too long to realise what a problem it was and do something about it. I think it was only really after I applied to join the police. This is in the period after I'd been medically discharged from the army, and I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do before I decided, actually, yes, the army is what I want to do. I looked at the police, and one of the things with the police is on the application, you've got to have been debt free for 2 years. And I mean, being debt free for 2 years actually is quite a feat at the moment. I think things like mortgages and loans, etc., may be different, but certainly the situation I was in, I wasn't eligible. And I think it just got me thinking that actually I really ought to do something about it. And I moved back to Horncastle. I moved in with my dad, and previously when I'd lived there, I'd been paying a little bit of board. I think it was about £30 a week, which, although I wasn't earning a lot either, so it was proportional, I think. When I moved back in with him, he let me live rent free, in order that I could then get this debt paid off. I got rid of my car, and I was using my sister's little Metro. Actually, surprisingly nice car, believe it or not, for a Metro. In fact, it wasn't a Metro, it was a Rover 100, I think it was, which is what the Metro became. Anyway, tangent again. So I was about 24 by that point when I started paying it back, and so I contacted the debt companies and worked out a payment plan, and it took me about a year, I think. It was actually surprisingly quick, a lot quicker than I'd anticipated. Bear in mind, I'd been putting it off for about 4 years. No, 6 years maybe. A long time anyway. And it was, I felt good about it. Almost like proud that I was finally doing this. And now I am, I make sure I don't have any loans. I don't have any credit cards. I don't have any finance. Everything I've got I own, which is probably why most of what I've got is secondhand, and I pay next to nothing for as much as I can, because I'm not wanting to put myself in that position again. I don't want something like that to have a hold over me, which is why I've just been selling all my old toy cars and things like that. I've got all my gold games consoles that were meant to be sort of as a future like investment and things like that. I'm selling those at the moment to raise money to re-releasing my music, because I'm not willing to go to the bank and get a loan to do it. It's not that I don't believe in myself, it's that I don't want to be under the thumb again. So that'd only be a really last resort. In fact, I'm looking at even crowdfunding before I turn back to getting a loan out. That said, I am mostly in my overdraft now, most of the time. But that's circumstance, unfortunately. Every time I get out my overdraft, or I'm about to get out of my overdraft, something happens. So I just got it all paid off in October, and my wife's car broke, and it was beyond economical repair, and needed to buy a new car. And again, not doing it on finance or anything, so the car was bought outright. Not an expensive car, but it tipped me over. And then Christmas, and then my kids' birthdays are both in January, and then my wife's birthday's in February, and I'll get out again at some point. It's just taking time. I need to be stricter. I'm still not great with money, but compared to what I was, massively better. So that's debt. Next subject. 28. Okay, TV. Well, favourite TV shows. I don't get a lot of time to watch telly, in all honesty. I get an hour a night if I'm lucky. Most of the time I don't get any time to watch TV. So most of what I watch on TV is pre-recorded. I just set it up on Sky, and it records shows I like, and then at least I've got something to pick from at a time when I do want to watch TV. So a lot of what I watch is things like on the Discovery Channel, like car shows. So I've got a little list here of some of the things I've been watching. Bitching Rides, which then became Kindigate Custom, I believe. Fast and Loud. Misfit Garage, which was a spin-off of Fast and Loud. Phantom Works, Goblin Works Garage, that's one that's set in the UK. Flipping Bangers and Turbo Pickers, in fact they're both set in the UK as well. I like a lot. I don't watch educational stuff as such, but I do like Discovery Channel programs about cars, because I like cars. Comedy. I love comedy. I don't get... My wife, she's not into comedy pretty much at all, and I don't understand that mentality of people who... I mean, why would you not want to laugh? I mean, I don't understand it. Anyway, Only Fools and Horses. It's got to be, I'd say, probably the best comedy of all time. In fact, I've got the DVD box set in front of me here in the caravan, and I've seen every episode. I don't know how many times, and I can guarantee it'll make me laugh. And the beauty of how it was written so well, actually you kind of grow up with these people. They become like family, and it's not just done for cheap laughs. There's actually a story there. There's sad bits, and it's amazing. I know it's a British thing. If you're watching in other countries, maybe some of the jokes wouldn't apply, but give it a go. It's amazing. In fact, looking at here, most of these sitcoms are British, so maybe it's just that, in my view, we do comedy better. So next one I've got down is Red Dwarf, which was an odd one for me. When I was at school, there was a couple of people I hung around with, and at lunchtime they always used to go into the science room and watch Red Dwarf with one of the teachers. And so I was invited along, and I always said no, because I thought Red Dwarf was like Star Trek, Star Wars, that sort of thing. And it was only years later I was watching something on telly. I was probably about 15 by this point, so a good maybe 4 years later, and I was just flicking through channels and started watching something, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it was only when the end credits came up that I realised that it was Red Dwarf, and how much I'd missed out on just by not giving it a go when I was younger. That particular episode was, I think it was like Gunmen of the Apocalypse or something like that, and they were basically going back in time to save the life of JF Kennedy, and then having to keep sending more and more of themselves back in time to fix the problems they were making with their alternate versions, and in the end having to kill themselves to stop them killing the shooter of JFK, because actually it turned out that the world was, the assassination happened for a reason. Anyway, complete tangent again. Red Dwarf, again, very, very good, especially if you're into sci-fi. You'll probably get a lot more of the references if you've watched shows like Star Trek and Star Wars and Babylon 5, and in fact I can't even name that many because it's not really my genre. I just like laughing. Next one I've got is Mr. Bean. I grew up with Mr. Bean, so I was probably 10-ish, I think, when Mr. Bean hit the screens. And the beauty of Mr. Bean is there's not really that much talking in it, so I don't know if it's popular abroad, but it should be, because I think you don't need to translate most of it. Everything is situational. It's what you see, and it's just normal situations that if you're not a native, I think it's set that Mr. Bean is possibly not from Earth, and therefore he finds himself in these situations that he doesn't understand, because it's just etiquette and common sense. But it's the logical approach is what he's taken, and it makes for hilarious results. And the beauty of it is, you can watch it at any age and it'll always be funny. And Rowan Atkinson is a comedy genius in his own right, really. You look at Blackadder as well. I was talking to my cousin about this, actually, because it's not that she doesn't like Mr. Bean, it was that she resented it because it took Rowan Atkinson away from making more Blackadder, which again is another national treasure. And again, if it's something you've not seen, well worth a watch. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. In fact, the only American show on here is something I discovered recently, well, maybe 6 months ago. On Facebook, there was an ad came up, well, not an ad, a little clip, and it was an identity parade. And the woman said that she didn't actually catch a look at the suspect, but she heard him singing. So then the policeman, Jake Peralta, gets all the people in the identity parade to start singing this song that she heard. And in the end, he starts singing along, and it's great. And then the witness said, "Oh yeah, it was number 5. Number 5's the guy who killed my brother." I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that." Anyway, it got me watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I love it. And that's one that even my wife likes. Maybe the British aren't better then, or maybe it's just my wife's got no sense of humour. But then she married me, so there must be a little bit of humour there, I suppose. Coupling, a bit like Friends, really. I think if you watch it from the start, you'll probably find it funnier than Friends. For me, I do anyway. It's just that because you know Friends so well, in the same way that I suppose I know Only Fools and Horses so well, that everything feeds into each other. If you've seen lots of episodes, you understand there's a lot more sort of in-jokes, which if you're only watching it for the first time in the first episode, you might not find it as funny as if you watch the whole series. Well, the whole 4 or 5 series. So worth looking at. And One Foot in the Grave, completely different end of the age spectrum to most of the other comedies out there. And again, it's situations that Victor Meldrew, the main character, finds himself in, which to an outsider they look really odd, but when you're following the story, actually you can see the logic and the rationale that's gone behind his thought process. And but it's just because of the situations, it's just hilarious, really. Maybe I'm not selling it well enough because I'm not laughing, but hilarious. A few other things to mention. Life on Mars, Ashes to Ashes, got very much into those. Anything old. And you're talking, obviously, there's lots of old cars, and just looking at how things were back then. And, all right, yeah, some of it is you're looking back with rose-tinted glasses and thinking how great things were. And obviously a lot of progress has been made, and most of it for the right reasons. But you watch shows like that, you think, it wasn't all bad back then. Lost, I'm one of those who actually made it till the end. I'd got too much time invested in Lost to think, you know what, I'm not understanding this, and just call it quits. I made it right to the end, and yes, I understand now what was happening, but only because I googled it. But I'd probably still watch it again. It was interesting, it was entertaining, it didn't make a lot of sense, but you don't necessarily need it to make sense. In the same way now, watching Manifest, about the plane takes off, as far as the passengers and crew are aware, everything's fine. When it lands, there's a lot of confusion because that plane was lost 5.5 years ago, I think it was. And it just suddenly comes back and no one's any idea what's happening. And it turns out there's some kind of psychic abilities with some of the people who are on the plane. Anyway, not too many spoilers there, I hope. Doctor Who, not really into the whole sci-fi thing, but something about Doctor Who just keeps it interesting. Again, very well written. And again, maybe it's the whole British aspect. Maybe it just resonates better with me. And the last one I've got in here is Walking Dead, because I think just because I like zombies. I don't know what it is about the whole zombie genre. In fact, I don't think it's even the zombie genre. I think it's more the apocalypse, about what happens to life after normal civilization ceases. And I've mentioned in previous episodes, I've got a VW camper which I've put on bull bars and spotlights, and I've got zombie outbreak response logos and things on it. And that's my zombie killing machine if the apocalypse happens, and as long as the zombies aren't fast enough, because as long as the zombies aren't too fast, because a VW camper is not the fastest vehicle in the world. Conscious of the time, it's about 25 minutes, so that's the end of this episode. Thank you for watching. Please click and subscribe. Please watch the next episode, and I will see you then.